In the mad scramble to the end of year deadlines, what were 2021's biggest tech stories?
And what will 2022 bring to the world of tech?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award winning network and Australian based support. Hey there, welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the award winning tech podcast, where we catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists to dive into the big tech news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always by heretic Alex Kidman, a blasphemer who doesn't believe that Die Hard is the greatest Christmas movie. Alex, what's essential Christmas viewing in the Kidman household?
Look, I feel I should make this clear. Die Hard is an action classic, great movie, but Christmas is not central to the narrative. And so clearly, and without any argument really, it's just science. The greatest Christmas movie is The Muppets Christmas Carol. You can't argue with it.
Oh, yeah, but if there was a Muppet Hans Gruber falling from a Muppet Nakatomi Plaza, maybe because it's not Christmas in my house until Hans falls off Nakatomi Plaza.
You
Now,
observe Christmas in your way, sir, and I will observe it in mine.
speaking of people who are dreaming of sitting on a beach making 20%, this week we're also joined once again by Finder Editor in Chief Angus Kidman. Gus, what's essential Christmas viewing at your place?
Well, I'm all about the Christmas TV rather than the Christmas movie, so I'm going to lean into Euthanasia, the greatest episode of The Goodies ever made, where the world is going to end in 30 minutes and they get up to all kinds of shenanigans. Classic viewing, get onto it. I think it's on BritBox now.
And it's like 4 Christmases in one, like in about a 3-minute segment in that episode, if I'm remembering correctly.
Absolutely.
So it's the last show of the year, and we didn't phone it in with a clip show. We thought we'd actually get together and actually talk about the big tech stories of the year. We've covered a lot during the year. It's a very changing landscape. Gus, what were the big stories of 2021?
Well, obviously, I feel like we have to start with Vertical Hole's soup du jour, which is the MBN, because that is the gift that just keeps on giving week in, week out. For a project that was supposed to be finished by 2021, we managed to keep hearing about new developments, things that were changing, things that were rolling out. I guess for me, maybe the highlight was almost the tacit admission that, yeah, this whole CVC model that we've got that means that basically wholesalers aren't happy, customers aren't happy, nobody's happy. That's going to have to go. It hasn't gone yet; it's still there, but I do feel like there was at least some exploration through the many regulatory tasks that the ACCC did that we might start changing that. So for me, that was probably the one of the MBN highlights.
And I reckon that could be an ongoing story for 2022, whether we get there next year that they get rid of CVC or whether they drag it on for a bit longer.
It's going to be tricky. They have to come up with a new version of their access undertaking by February. There's actually like the ACCC's been looking into this, like some deadlines are looming in on them. So it looks like they have to do something, but it would be a fool to predict that the NBN would do something in a timely fashion.
Well, speaking of doing things in a timely fashion in the NBN, the other thing, and I suppose this also fits into the admissions bucket, is the effective admission that, yeah, the whole multi technology mix thing didn't really sort out all that well because they started much more seriously talking about actually doing fiber to the premises for an awful lot more people, predominantly who had been put into the fiber to the node bucket.
Yeah, and that was an exciting development for them to say, "Hey, we will do this, and we won't charge you $15,000 per premise to get it done." So
Like
I
those
guess
poor schmucks at the beginning.
we'd have to call that progress of a sort, I think. Although, again, classic NBN. Oh, here's a list of suburbs. Can I find out if it applies to where I am? No, we'll tell you that a little bit later.
It's fair to assume, though, that even if we see a change of federal government in the middle of next year, which is fairly likely, we're not going to switch back to fiber to the premises for everyone, are we?
Well, I think you've got to bear in mind we were never going fiber to the premises for absolutely everybody
No,
anyway.
true. It was going to be like 93% and the rest on satellite and fixed wireless. But they're not going to turn around and say, hey, let's go back to the old way of doing things, are they?
No, and I think, look, at this stage, there is actually a reasonable costs argument to say, look, there might not be a good case for doing that
Yeah.
because it's so patchy. You'd
It's
really
too
have to work
broken.
out which bits do you need to overbuild. And come on, it's taken them long enough. And I understand it is a complex task, but it's taken them long enough to sort out which areas they're going to do these upgrades in and when those will be available and how people will apply for all of that. If you suddenly said, oh, and we're going to do all the other bits which were fiber to the node, then it gets even more complicated and messy. I mean, we had Nick Healy on the show the other week, and he was saying that he's in one part of Dubbo, which is fiber to the node, and the other half of the town is fiber to the premises. That's probably a pretty easy split, but there are definitely areas out there where it's literally one side of the street or the other. That gets harder, especially once you've got to start digging things up again, maybe for very small stretches of land.
There's still people who can't even connect to the NBN. What they'll tell you about, oh, it's all done and dusted. It is not. I'm still hearing from readers and listeners who can't get hooked up for whatever reason. They keep coming out saying, oh, no, I can't do it. I have to come back next week. So there, there's still a very big digital divide between these people who are going, hey, we might be getting gigabit. And these people are like, oh, man, I'm still on DSL.
So I think this actually leads into one of the other big tech stories of the year, which are the wireless NBN competitors.
Mm.
Because we saw things like Starlink and we saw the telcos start to really seriously push 5G at home broadband, so called fixed 5G, a device that doesn't travel with you like your phone, but one that sits in your living room like your NBN NTD does.
Oh, your unemployed brother in law.
Potato, potato. Right, but yeah, it was a really notable trend that suddenly we were seeing this promotion that okay, it doesn't just have to be the NBN that's coming in there. That said, and while we saw like big launches there, all the major telcos are now offering a kind of home 5G product. The products still consistently were not very good. They don't have enough data on them. They're not spectacularly well priced. I don't know that any of them are a great solve. Starlink might be a great solve if you really are one of those 10,000 unfortunate people who can't get anything, because at least it's got good reach. But for the others, they still have that whiff to me of a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah, Starlink's got a ton of potential if you're really, really rural, because the overall experience of satellite NBN is, and it was always going to be, it's a limitation of the technology, was fairly low grade. Starlink's a big kick upwards in that sense, although there's also, as we saw during the year, some interesting financials around Starlink. So whether or not investing in a Starlink satellite dish is wise, that sort of remains to be seen as well. On that 5G front as well, and part of the reason why they're starting to talk a lot more 5G home broadband, we also saw millimeter wave. So we saw the true, so they say, really, really fast 5G coming in, as long as you're within like a city
Yeah,
block
I
of one of
think
their
glimpsed
antennas.
is a better word than saw.
Sneak peek.
Sneak peek.
Wandered into the vague proximity of.
Yeah. Gus, is there any? How far away do you think we are from millimeter wave actually being useful to anybody? And who will it be useful to if you've got to stand on a certain street corner on one foot with your arm stretched out to reach it?
Oh, we're a good couple of years away from millimeter wave being useful or anyone caring, because, and that's not even necessarily about the technology, just because our adoption cycles for phones are so slow now. People are
Hmm.
just not going to have devices that care about them much. They haven't been a priority to launch in Australia because we haven't got them. So we've seen those splits of iPhones turning out to have wildly different capacities in different parts of the world. So in the long term, it's a useful thing to have in there, but it's part of asking, well, when is millimeter wave going to be useful? It's like asking, when is 5G going to be useful? When is 5G going to matter? And the answer is that 5G is going to matter at the point when they're about to switch off 4G and it's the only option you've got. Until then, it's going to be one of a few things that people are using.
I think the other thing for 5G that's been a big factor this year and will almost certainly be a big factor next year as well has been that our mobile broadband usage has changed because so many of us have been stuck at home.
Hmm.
The big thing that 5G was meant to do as well was make it possible to do the whole sporting events and airports and not having big congested networks, having networks that had enough throughput to handle all of those users on 5G devices. And people just haven't had that opportunity to do that or the need in a lot of cases.
And that definitely does flatten the interest, yeah, because you're not trying to solve those crowded problems. That said, that's definitely something where, yeah, we might see more of that happening in 2022. We might actually finally see the ability for lots of people to be in one place, and we'll be able to move on, and we won't have to hold the AFL Grand Final in Adam's backyard.
I can make room. I just got rid of the swings. It'll be fine.
Well, thinking around the AFL Grand Final, stop being shocked, Adam. 2021 also saw some big moves in streaming rights, including like sports streaming rights. We've got quite a few episodes. I was looking back through the archives. We dedicated a lot of time to this year because a lot of Australians are very passionate about sport, of course. Adam, do you think at the end of 2021, Australian consumers won in the kind of streaming space relative to where we were at the start of the year?
Not really, because if you're having to hand over more money to sign up for more services to watch the things you want to watch, then I don't really think you can say that you won. And again, going into this is something that I think is going to get worse next year. But a good example of that we talked about was Paramount coming to Australia and saying, yoink, thank you very much. We'll have Star Trek Discovery back from Netflix. They're likely going to yoink Picard away from Amazon. And you've got to wonder, how if they can take those shows, which were supposedly life of series shows, so they couldn't take them, yet they still did. Any of your favorite shows safe anymore, wherever you watch them?
Of course not, because they're trying to make money. This should come as
Mm,
no shock to us
yes.
whatsoever. And it's also coming back, and this will be shocking. Two Kidmans talking about sport on the same podcast. But coming back to that point, like it was inevitable that we were going to see that big fragmentation, that shift where suddenly, instead of thinking, okay, well, I'll be able to see a lot of sport, in one place, it was going to end up on half a dozen services because
Yeah.
sport is where the profit center has always been for television in Australia. It was the entire basis of Foxtel becoming the business that it did. And even though Foxtel's kind of, trying to hang on to that, it's got KO. You're going to see this split going on. You're seeing it now. You've had, for all that, everyone was freaking out about Star Trek, but there are probably as many or more people freaking out about the way that the round ball game went
Oh, for
across
sure.
multiple
Yeah.
services. So, but I think this is the thing. You've got to be careful what you wish for. Everyone goes, oh, it's great. Like, I don't have to pay $80 for this bundle of things. I can choose what I want. But you still have to, TV doesn't get made for free and you end up having to pay for it somehow. So I think consumers are going to have to get smarter about what they pay for because the businesses aren't going to make it easier.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of piracy. Because when most people think piracy, they think, something like BitTorrent and downloading the shows that you want to watch. And you think, okay, well, that's not really a problem for sport because sport is something that people tend to want to watch live. So they're not going to wait until it's finished and then download it from the Pirate Bay. But there's always been an issue with pirate streaming. It's almost like the goodies, the boat off the shore. You know,
Yep.
but they're streaming, pirate streams of live sports events, which you don't hear about for a while, and then comes and goes. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about that next year, and there's more of an effort to try and block those services because there'll be more demand for them because people will be going, well, I don't want to sign up for a sixth service to watch that one match or that one tournament. I just found an illegal server to watch it on.
And there's some data that suggests we actually already saw that happening during the past 2 years. Again, because like everything, the pandemic, one of your solves for how to watch something you didn't have a service for before was go and find a pub that had it on. You haven't
Yeah,
had that option for the last 18 months.
exactly. Yeah.
So there's definitely, I do think, there's always going to be an undercurrent of pirate streaming, whether that's and it comes down to the level of people like literally FaceTiming it with their phone onto another service. Like that's the thing. We've got our streaming technology so good that low grade piracy is going to be almost impossible to stamp out.
And look, it all leads, I think, to this kind of bunkering thing where you do get this siloed content. And I had to look back and work out the timing. The mouse shaped elephant in the room, if you will, is Disney here because they're classics for this. They launched Star this year. That was earlier this year, and that, of course, made shifted Disney Plus from being we're all just family friendly kids programming to we're family friendly programming, but also we've got a lot more content for the older viewer. But all of that stuff, I mean, they've got things, Adam, I know you're a big fan of Bob's Burgers. That's on Disney Plus. It's never going anywhere else.
Yeah, but I maybe watch Bob's Burgers other ways. So that's not really a problem. It is one of the things I like, and that might be as we get more global rights for things. One of the things I like about acquiring Bob's Burgers is that I watch it when it's released in the US, which means I see the Thanksgiving episode at Thanksgiving and I see the Christmas episode at Christmas. And Australians have never been able to do that. We're just used to this idea that we watch the Christmas episode in May because we're always out by so long. So it'll be interesting to see as people get more of a taste for that whether they then go, well, why am I putting up with that over here when I can just go and source it another way?
Well, we're already seeing that actually. And I can think of two examples here, so slightly esoteric different ones. in the Disney Plus series Hawkeye, which is
Yeah.
explicitly Christmas set, and they've released it now to coincide with that for the US winter
Yeah.
season. But also fans of the UK show Taskmaster. They've got a New Year's Day special coming up in the UK, which is going to show on Foxtel at the right time around New Year's Day, which is quite a big difference for those kinds of programs, as you say, because typically we'd sort of get them in the middle of summer or we might get them 3 years later if we were lucky. So I think that market is shifting because people's expectations around that are shifting. I still fall back into that whole my whole strategy around this is still to say, no, I'm not paying for 6 streaming services. I'll pay for one, maybe two, because I've only got one set of eyes. There's only so much content I can watch at a time. And outside of sports, very different. It'll still be there if I subscribe next month, and if I drop Disney and pick up Netflix, or if I drop Stan and pick up Disney, or wherever you choose to jump.
Yeah. Or there's the brother-in-law principle. You don't need to sign up for every streaming service. You just need a brother-in-law who signs up for each one, and then you just share logins.
I'm so looking forward to when Adam's brother-in-law gets arrested as a result of his repeated references to this phenomenon.
I believe that'd be a civil suit. They wouldn't actually arrest him. I suppose the other thing that you need for streaming is TV. And we've got CES coming up. And Adam, CES is usually one of the big things about it is the big TV story. What have we got to look forward to there? Do we know at this point?
Well, before we look forward, I think it's worth looking back at what came along this year. And the big story in televisions was mini LED. It was the first time we got a really good taste of it. It showed up not just in televisions, but also in notebooks and phones and all kinds of things. And it is the first screen with a backlight that can actually go toe to toe with OLED, at least until you turn the lights off. Like after dark, my LG OLED still runs rings around all the mini LEDs I've tested. But during the day, some of them come pretty damn close. So I think, yeah, mini LED has been the big story in televisions this year. As for 2022, I'm not sure because we're not up to the next. The next thing is micro LED, I think, where each pixel is its own light. So it's basically as good as OLED in terms of the backlight, yet as bright as mini LED and QLED. I still think that's one of those experimental, a couple of things away. You can buy a tiny one that'll cost you an arm and a leg. So I think it'll probably just be honing in the mini LED because we're still really only on the probably the first generation for a lot of manufacturers, and it's going to get better. One of the it needs to get brighter. Some of them still aren't very bright, and it also the number of segments that they break the backlight into makes a big difference. So I think they'll all be bragging about how their mini LEDs have got better since last year.
Are they still going to be honking on about 8K, even though there's no 8K
Oh, of
content?
course they are. I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would care. Today I've written a review of an 8K TV that said you'd be crazy to throw a perfectly good 4K television on the nature strip today to get an 8K television. But if you're already in the market for a television and you tend to hang on to your televisions for at least 5 years or more, like I'm a tight ass, I hang on to them probably closer to 10, then you might think about 8K, but I don't know where the hell the content's going to come from. The content makers haven't shown any interest in making it. The content streamers haven't shown any interest. Don't even, think about the broadcasters who aren't even interested in 4K. So yeah, it took a while for 4K to come along, and at the time people were like, oh yeah, why would you want 4K? But 8K is just a whole level above that in terms of the lag before it, if and when it ever happens.
So I've got to say, Adam, I'm still I don't care about 4K guy.
Ooh.
Doesn't matter to me in the slightest. Not interested. It wouldn't register beyond, as you said, that simple thing of if I was to go and buy a new television, I would get the newest, greatest thing
Yeah.
I could in the expectation I'd hang on for a while. But in terms of thinking I'm going to worry about it in terms of content, half the stuff I watch on my TV comes from YouTube. It's just not going to serve in that
Yeah.
context.
But see, I am a home entertainment guy. I am a TV guy, and I still don't care about 8K.
And I mean, I'm a console gaming guy, and 8K still hasn't wowed me on that side.
Yeah.
And that's somewhere where the content is actually, in one sense, easier to produce. There's a bit more demand for people doing big upscaley things with video games.
Big upscaly things.
One of the other things that we saw a kind of slower evolution of in 2021 was the phone space. A few nice premium phones. Google jumped back into the game with the Pixel 6 Pro, which we really liked. People should check out our couple of episodes of that. Um, and we also serve foldables. And Adam, I'm mad keen on foldables, and you are significantly less so, I think it's fair to say.
I've just never really seen the appeal, and I'm wondering if or when foldables could ever go mainstream. I always think they're going to be too expensive, perhaps too fragile, and just too niche. Um, Gus, do you think that foldables is there going to be a year of the foldables, or is the year of foldables going to be the same year as the year of Linux on the desktop?
No, I think foldables have more potential than Linux on the desktop. Let's be realists here. Like, certainly, more money's been put into foldables in the last month than has been put into Linux on the desktop in the whole decade. Like, it's just different scale of things going on. I don't. I can't imagine a universe where the foldable is the norm. I
No.
can imagine a universe where we're looking at more choice. We've got a bit more used to the idea that we've got more choice in these things. Like, you've got the scale of devices. If you incorporate tablets into your thinking, I think there's a logical point to say the
Yeah.
foldable will be a choice. It will be an option. Is it going to be the predominant option? Probably not. Is there going to be a foldable that I can go and buy from my local supermarket? No, not for a long time. We're a long way away from that. But I can see a kind of mid-range to high-end space where there's some demand for that and that it will happen. I just think this notion that we go that, wow, that will be the single form factor. I just think we've passed that in phones generally. Foldables are just an alternative that's going to exist in that space.
Yeah, look, they're absolutely not going to dominate, but I think this year we saw some big steps towards them becoming a lot more mainstream. So Samsung were leading the charge with that this year, given that their new foldables had water resistance, not dust resistance. We're not quite the full way to a foldable that's as tough as a non-foldable, but we're getting there. They also dropped the price. And look, I talk to a lot of phone makers. I look at what they're doing. There are a lot of them gearing up for next year with foldables. And it is somewhere we're going to see more price competition where they will stop being this ultra premium thing. Right now, they're sort of in that, it's a choice if you're in that flagship space. Next year, we should start to see them drift down into that kind of high mid range, maybe even. And from there, you do start tumbling down. You're right, Gus. We're not going to see them in supermarkets for a good long time. But you do see a lot of interest, not just in that tablet style thing, but in the flip style deal for people who just don't want a big phone. And I think if you said to people, hey, you can have this thing which is going to be smaller and easier to carry because they only use their phone as a simpler communication device, yeah, I think there's a lot of people who would probably go for that.
Let's face it, the only foldable that Adam actually needs is the original Game & Watch version of Donkey Kong.
Absolutely. I almost bought one of them when I was in Japan. My mate had one. I loved it.
I could reach one right now, but that's not going to surprise anyone.
So we got Windows 11. Does anybody care?
Nope.
Moving on.
Not massively. Although, look, I think it's worth saying we got Windows 11, we got Mac OS Monterey. They are just at this stage evolutions. They're just, hey, it's a little bit better.
Oh, Monterey's
For
a little
both-
bit stuffed, but
Possibly. Well, I was going to say though, for both, they promise some big features we haven't seen yet. So for Monterey, I should be able to use Monterey to control things across a Mac and an iPad and an iPhone, like one big happy Apple walled garden. For Windows 11, I should be able to run Android apps. I can't yet.
on Monterey,
So
I
they
should be able
started-
to use Apple Mail without it shitting the bed, but here we are.
Yeah, but that's Apple Mail.
Yeah,
that's not actually
That is
new.
partly on me, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I think question your choices there, Adam. Like, you just may not be making the right decisions on that front.
But they're promising big. They're kind of promising these big features that they don't deliver at launch. Gus, do you think they would have been better served saying, yeah, look, these aren't ready at launch, so let's hold off for 3 to 4 months to actually launch?
No, I don't, because I do think on the Windows front, they managed a pretty clean sequential launch. We haven't seen lots of reports of everything going wrong. So I think that's been a benefit. I know there's still going to be the point where people get forced onto it. They don't know what's coming. They suddenly find their start bar in the middle of the screen. Adam's in-laws ring him. The world explodes at around that point.
Yeah.
But I do think I would give them some. Yeah, nobody wants spectacular, exciting changes to their operating system. They just don't want that anymore. I'm all for having some staggered rollouts, and if that means that we're waiting another 6 months to start running Android apps that aren't designed for a big screen on a big screen, I can live with that compromise.
So Facebook was another one that dominated the headlines this year and really sort of just broader than that, a lot of security and privacy concerns, the whole no news for you situation, the whole we're becoming meta. Gus, is Facebook going to take over the world here, or are we a little bit over it? How's it playing out for Facebook?
We're a little bit over it, but it remains the biggest thing in the world, I
Yes.
think, is where Meta is sitting. I mean, it's a measure of how much the world has changed in 12 months. But if you go back 12 months, the big issue that Facebook was grappling with at that moment was how quickly could they close off Donald Trump and could they leave him off?
Mm,
That was only 12 months ago.
yeah.
And we have been through an ocean of developments in that time. To some extent, what Facebook, and we will keep calling them Facebook, let's face it, calling them Meta does not feel like it's really logical. They were threatened with regulation on all sides, and they mostly managed to get around it. Like they were told, "Oh well, we're going to change the laws so that you have to help subsidise news in Australia." They briefly switched off access
Mm,
to make everyone panic, and then came up with a nice sweetheart deal where a handful of their favoured media outlets got some money, and everybody else got squat, and no one wanted to do anything about it.
yeah.
Like,
Thanks very much.
I think it would be foolish to assume that they're not powerful just by virtue of the size of the network that they have. At the same time, I think it remains evident that they are not doing a good job of attracting new users en masse. That, at a certain age, Facebook is just not the thing that you think about in a major way. And there's not an obvious solve going on for that. And the whole transition into Meta is an attempt to say, hey, we'll be relevant in the future, even if that attempt is basically saying, hey, Second Life, let's try that again.
But they have a product for younger users that younger users use, and that's Instagram. And this year, they also revealed, rather inadvertently, yeah, look, we know Instagram is really awful for young
Mm.
people, but we don't care. We want that product right there. How apathetic are people that we keep using this company's products when all this information comes out that says, yeah, look, it's really bad for old people because they trade in conspiracy theories. It's really bad for middle-aged people because they get fed the conspiracy theories. The other products are really bad for young people. I mean, they avoided Instagram for youngsters, babies, whatever it was called off the top of my head, I can't recall, but only just. It's going to be coming, or there'll be a metaverse headset for infants. I'm confident within the next year or so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, in that sense, as humanity, we get what we deserve. We are
Mm.
utterly apathetic about this. We don't switch ourselves off. We're hooked onto it. We know it's designed to be hooked onto it. Like there's some psychology there. So on that level, yeah, we're getting the thing that we deserve. The only thing I'm hoping is that our apathy means that at some point, yeah, it will drop off a little bit for people. It will move on to something, and we won't be freaking out about this. We'll be freaking out about all the personal data that's going into TikTok. Like at some point, that's the thing. If it wasn't Meta, it would be somebody else, I suspect.
So the other reason, of course, that Facebook changed their name to Meta is because they want to push this whole metaverse concept and they want to own it. And it's going to be one of the big tech stories of at least next year till it explodes or blows up in their face. But Gus, Facebook didn't invent the metaverse, did they?
Not at all. Like, not in any way. It's not a new concept. And they're not the only one making noise about it. They're just the only one to put it in their company name. So this notion of virtual spaces it obviously, it has a certain, relevance in a year where we've all spent a lot of our time doing virtual things. But it's, I think there will be a lot of fussing about it. I will be genuinely amazed if in a year's time there's a single usable product that remotely resembles anything that was in that terrible Zuckerberg video where he showed it off. We're so far away from that, it's not funny.
But while it's still maybe a pipe dream for Facebook, this kind of stuff is already happening. And it's not just like we went through the whole Second Life phase, but there are new generations of metaverses like Decentraland. Now, they're selling virtual real estate in there for millions of dollars. It's turning into another one of those virtual land grabs, and they've got their own currency. It's looking like what they sound like they want the metaverse to be is already happening. So is it a question of Facebook is going to try and come in over the top and pretend they invented it Apple style, or do you think that we will have these different fragmented metaverses? How do you think it will play out?
It may well be fragmented. Like we're hearing a lot of talk. One of the hype trends at the moment is around the idea of Web 3 or Web 3.0. And one of the underlying ideas of that is that things should be decentralized and they should be based on standards. Like none of this sounds like news. We've been writing this stuff for
Mm,
20, 30 years. But
yeah.
there's definitely a push to try and say, look, this shouldn't be stuff that is solely the province of one company. And that's a challenge for an organization like Facebook, which is very controlling of its own protocols and its own access to things. Like, to play in that space in a nice way, ideally, you are going to have to actually do things in a way that makes it slightly portable. That means that you're not the only source of truth for this information. And if that service goes, well, goodbye, it's gone forever. And that very much sort of overlaps the world of metaverse with the world of NFTs and the world of crypto. Like, this is how all this stuff is going to merge together. Does anyone know how that's going to play out? Nope, we ain't got a clue. We're at the phase with that now where there's some things that are going really well, but will anyone care about them in 3 years' time? You really wouldn't know. And there's going to be a lot of digital detritus on the way to working out which bits of the metaverse people actually find useful.
Well, traditionally, you might have looked to someone like Google to come in and create more of a shared standard and something that's a bit more open, but we know we can't trust them to keep stuff. I'm looking at Google Wave, I'm looking at Reader, I'm looking at everything else. Wave is kind of a great example of something they built and handed to the world the same way they could with something like a metaverse, but you just can't be sure that in 12 months' time they don't lose interest and go off and do something else.
Absolutely, that's the risk for a Google involvement. But it's why the underpinning technology becomes important. It's why, to cite something which I know will make Adam's blood boil yet again, the blockchain is one of the things that matters.
Drink.
But it's true in that the core advantage of blockchain technology is that no one person controls the register, no one person controls the information. True. That's a really big shift from the way that anything works. That's a big shift from the way something like Wave worked, as much as all the code for that was open source. So if people build metaverse components in the right way so that they're not centrally controlled, it could be really interesting. Would I want to trust that some big corporate won't come up with, the equivalent of literally, we could have the metaverse version of ActiveX suddenly locking everybody on a terrible product for decades. Yeah. Like, that's the kind of inflection point we're at, but I'm not, when that actually happens, whether we'll get good standards, really open question.
But we'll also have people building their businesses on the metaverse the same way they foolishly built their businesses on Facebook, and then they have it all pulled out from underneath them.
I think we established people are fools.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say, with the Facebook example, I would have thought the obvious example, what Meta does with that, is what it does with the existing web. When you're introducing the metaverse to consumers, you say, well, you could set up a login for the vertical hold version of the metaverse, or you can log in with this handy Facebook button, and then we'll track all your data while you're doing it. That's what I would do if I was Meta and I was trying to take over the world. For legal liability reasons, I suppose I should point out, I'm not accusing Meta of trying to take over the world, although clearly that's what they're trying to do.
Absolutely. I look forward to Meta Vertical, as you're going to call it.
The other thing, and this was a big news story this year, but I think it's going to play into next year, that I think is going to hit all of this, because all of this technology is underpinned on the idea that you've got a server somewhere, you've got a device somewhere, whether it's a VR headset or a phone or a laptop or whatever, is the whole chip shortage story. And this year, that's sort of been about people not being able to buy PS5s. Next year, though, it's looking a lot more complex, with people paying a lot more for just about everything.
I get to say it. Supply chain!
Woohoo! We should remember, of course, that one of the other unexpected impacts of the chip shortage this year was all those people who got delayed getting onto the NBN because they couldn't get onto the HFC because they didn't have any gear. So yeah, it happens. It's real. It's now. It is the future.
So with all the phone makers moving, well, not with more manufacturers moving to making their own silicon, we've got Google, we've got Apple. Is that good or bad from a supply chain perspective? Because they're not as relying as much on other companies, but then they've got to have the capacity to do it themselves.
It depends on. Sorry, guys, you go.
The problem is that there are just a lot of block points in the supply chain. Even if you've got multiple manufacturers, you tend to have these single points of failure. There are only a handful of suppliers for certain rare earth minerals. There are so many ships you can push through the Panama Canal in a day, and having
especially if one goes through sideways.
Well, that adds a whole extra degree of complexity for sure. But the general point holds that when the shortages aren't just because there's just one manufacturer. In some ways, when there's just one manufacturer, one person's in control of the process, they know what's going on. But supply chains are fiddly and complex, which is why I shouldn't have been a journalist. I should have been a supply chain analyst to be I'd be preparing my beach house right now. But too late.
I was going to say, the chip shortage phone thing, it does depend, I think, on how good a negotiator you are, because one of the big things with the chip shortage has been who can actually get in there and secure orders and get enough supply for certain components. And when you're talking these individual components, as you said, you've got Apple, you've got Google. Oppo just announced they're doing their own chipsets for their own phones. On the consumer side, that gets really exciting because we'll see some more differentiated phones and things that are not just, oh, it's this processor, this GPU, it's all much the same except their phone is in blue. But not if you can't actually buy them because they can only get 5 chips a day.
Why would Oppo be making their own chips? Like, surely there comes a point where
They're designing them because so for their stuff, it's exactly that. It's actually no different to Apple or to Google. It's to give them a competitive edge because they talk up, and all of this is hype at this point because nobody's tested these devices. But their contention is they can put in specific processing units for things like image processing. So you can get more out of a camera lens module, or you can do more AI backend stuff. You can throw in more security. That's Google's angle with Tensor, for example. Or for Apple, the story for the A series chips has long been that huge performance gap they've got. They're not doing a whole bunch with it just yet, but they're very, very fast chips. So they can differentiate from the rest of the pack. If you're an Oppo, you do it because you've got Huawei and Xiaomi and all these other companies breathing down your neck, and they're all selling Qualcomm and MediaTek phones. There is a fair bit of commonality in that mid-range and budget space where they do a lot of their selling. But even in the high end, they want to stand out. And Oppo did that this year, in fact, with that whole weird microscope lens they had on the Find X3 Pro. Interesting idea, didn't work great. Next year, it means they can say, well, actually, we've now got better cameras than anyone because it's running on our own, or it's relying on our own silicon, which nobody else has.
So is it a case of Oppo chips attract? I'm sorry, I'll leave now.
You should not have taken that opportunity.
Save me, please.
Chip shortages have really weird impacts. As a result of the chip shortage, it's now really expensive to get a hire car in Australia. Like, it's really weird how these things impact the world.
Why?
Because cars are full of chips. So we can't get new supplies of cars into the country, so there's not as many hire cars as there's demand, so money goes up. This is a total diversion you should probably edit out, but anyway.
No. We should keep it because it leads into one of Adam's favourite tech celebrities, Mr. Elon Musk. And one of the things that happened to Tesla in the US this year was that they started shipping cars, and their cars have USB sockets because we're in 2021 and you need those in a car. But they started shipping Teslas that had the sockets with no USB circuitry behind them whatsoever because they couldn't get the chips. And they basically, you'd get your Tesla, it'd have these holes in the dash where the USB should plug in, but if you plugged anything in, it'd just fall right through. And they basically said, look, what you'll have to do is take it back to the dealership once those parts arrive and we'll fit them for you.
Arrives with 3 wheels and we'll post you the other one in the mail. Actually,
Exactly.
no, arrives with 3 wheels. If you drive it back to the shop, we'll put the 4th wheel on for you.
Yeah, but that's exactly what Gus is getting at as well. Cars are absolutely chip dependent, and yeah, hire cars are a good example of that. And supply chains as well, of course, because actually getting new cars into the country involves supply chains too. But we are not a supply chain podcast.
Yes, we are.
There's one thing that's not going to change next year, people. Not going to change.
Vertical supply hold.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode and another year of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Gus for joining us for this week's show.
Pleasure, as always.
And Gus, you're an old hand at this. It's time for the Vertical Hold 3 questions, oh doom. I'll give you all 3 in one hit, and then you can answer them in any order you like. Where can people find your work online? Where can they find your social media online? And our current big contentious question, as we've been discussing recently, rats have been trained by scientists to play Doom in VR, and just recently, scientists have also trained human brain cells to play Pong. Which video game, classic or not, should rats or brain cells or both be trained to play next?
Okay, so people can find my work online at finder.com.au. They can find me on Twitter at GusWorldAU. I had a lot of potential candidates for what the rats should be trained up on, but I feel like at this stage, I really want to see them build up their language skills. So I want to see a rat take on Leather Goddesses of Phobos.
Oh, no, because I was about to say, I can't believe no one's chosen Leisure Suit Larry, but you've topped that. You've topped that.
See, now my brain is spinning in for Common Adventures. I want to see the brain cells in that case take on Hitchhiker's Guide and try and have the sandwich and not the sandwich at the same time. And for those who understand what the hell I just said, congratulations, you're quite old.
Bring your towel.
Indeed. And as always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, via the Vertical Hold Facebook/Meta page, or at verticalhold.com.au.
And thanks again, everyone, for tuning in for another episode and another year. It's been a big one. It's been an award-winning one. Thanks for joining us on the journey. We're taking a couple of weeks of well-deserved break, and we'll be back with a post-CES show on January 14. So don't forget to tell your friends about us, leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice, and help us spread the good word in 2022. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. All right, thank you, linesman. Thank you, ball boys. That was beautiful.
So, are you now going to stop the whole?
Yes, I am now going to
you should hit the big red stop button at some point.